Welcome to Taiwan Talks. I'm Betty Chen. According to an NHK report, there are currently 19,000 U.S. Marines stationed in Okinawa, and from these, 9,000 of them will be gradually relocated to Guam and Hawaii. Yazhou Zhoukan pointed out that this marks the first time that a relocation of U.S. troops has been realized since the U.S. and Japan reached a consensus on the withdrawal of U.S. forces from Japan in 2006. What impact will this have on the first island chain defense line? And how will this affect the Indo-Pacific situation? Joining us today are Chen Ping-kuei, National Chengchi University Department of Diplomacy Professor, and Wang Kaijun, Foreign Policy Advisor at the Office of ROC Legislator Xu Qiaoxing. A warm welcome to both of you on the show. Continuing with the withdrawal of U.S. troops from Japan, this move is a continuation of the 2006 U.S.-Japan relocation plan. It is expected that approximately 4,000 Marine Corps members will be relocated to Guam and 5,000 will move to Hawaii, leaving only 10,000 U.S. troops stationed in Okinawa. This adjustment not only optimizes military deployments, but also reflects the latest developments in the U.S. strategy for balancing the presence in the Asia-Pacific region. The Japanese Ministry of Defense has stated that the relocation of U.S. forces will be carried out in stages, with a first phase involving withdrawal of around 100 personnel. The relocation is expected to cost about $8.6 billion US dollars, with Japan contributing up to $2.8 billion. The U.S. military will construct command centers, barracks, and training facilities at the new locations, and Japan's self-defense forces will also have the opportunity to jointly use these training areas. So as we can see, Okinawa is the military cornerstones for U.S. defense of the first island chain. Although Okinawa's land area accounts for only 0.6% of Japan's total territory, it hosts 70.3% of U.S. military-based facilities in Japan. So my first question is directed to you, Professor Chen. Could you please provide an overview, and a brief analysis of the strategic importance of Okinawa?
So Okinawa as an island, of course, is part of a first island chain. So Okinawa as a territory, it stations troops, and it can provide assistance and support, logistic support to military forces. So the importance of Okinawa is that it has been U.S. military base for a very, very long time, since World War II. So it has been, like you said, 70% of the U.S. armed forces concentrate on Okinawa. That makes Okinawa an important strategic point.
So talking about the importance of Okinawa, we understand that in October 2024, the U.S. and Japan held a large-scale joint military drill called King Sword 25. And now the U.S. has its relocation plan. And what kind of unusual message has been sent? Kaijun?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think, there are several elements towards this. I mean, the first one is absolutely when it comes to the U.S. government finally making its commitment with the Japanese government for the agreement that they signed in 2006. There's also a trend, I think, when it comes to U.S. military's emphasis on the survivability and also force preservation when it comes to this region, as the Chinese so-called A2AD area access and anti-denial capability has been gradually increasing. And I think the third so-called aspect is, I think the U.S. is expecting the Japanese self-defense force to play a larger role in the future's region security. Of course, the timing does invite certain speculations, as all the countries involved and nearby or affected by such changes are experiencing major political changes in their societies. And, this might impact the existing security arrangement in the region, but we have to wait and see. Right.
So moving on, according to a report by the ABC News, the U.S. Marine Corps is committed to defending Japan and will maintain its military presence in the Indo-Pacific region through stationed and also rotational forces in Japan, Guam, and Hawaii in support of the operational needs of a free and open Pacific, which is a very important policy of the United States. So how should this be interpreted, Professor?
I think this is, like Kaijun just mentioned, it means that Japanese forces may take more responsibility in the future military installation and future military plan. But also, we have to understand that even though the U.S. is trying to increase the survivability of its forces, it does not mean that it has weaker commitment to Japanese security. Actually, the rotational forces also occurred in the case of Australia. So this kind of rotation is not uncommon in U.S. military deployment.
So you said that this is something that we have seen adopted by the United States elsewhere. Do you foresee any new strategies when it comes to the military cooperation between the U.S. and Japan?
I think, as I said, Japanese armed forces will take more responsibility and they will coordinate with the U.S. in case of armed conflict in East China Sea, Korea Peninsula, or even Taiwan Strait. However, the degree of involvement of the Japanese armed forces is still uncertain, but because at the end of the day, we know that Japanese armed forces will focus on the security of Japanese territory instead of foreign territory.
So definitely we understand that for the security of Japan, that's the most important thing for Japan as a nation. But my question for you, Kai-jun, we understand that the U.S. forces have sent the troops in Okinawa for a long time. Why do the U.S. choose to have this relocation plan initiated or implemented right now? Because previously we have heard about the complaints, whether it's about the noise or the crimes or the pollution related with the U.S. military stationed in Okinawa. There were no actions whatsoever. But why now? What about the timing?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think when it comes to timing, to a certain extent, I think is perhaps you might listen to what the Japanese and the American government will say is that maybe this has been planning for a very long time. And then, it might happen to be one of President Biden's, perhaps one of the things that he really wants to achieve. So, approaching the end of his term, I think this is something that he really, really wants to realize. And also, just to echo the professor, when we talked about U.S. commitments and also their capabilities in the region is not being diminished, I think because what we are seeing right now is the redeployment of the marine elements. But we also need to understand that the 7th Fleet hasn't left. The Kaneda Air Base on Okinawa still has, for example, the 18th U.S. wing and also the, what is it called, the 353rd Special Operations Wing. So, when it comes to any kinds of contingency in the region, usually we see the priority deployment of the air and also the sea element. So I think, the U.S. commitment towards this region remain solid.
Yes, Professor?
If I may add, so in addition to what Kai-jun just said, if this might be something Biden administration want to do, we also have to consider the Japanese government. So the current governor of Okinawa, Tamaki Danny, has been a long-time opposer of the U.S. military base in Okinawa. So the domestic political pressure is actually pretty huge for the Japanese government for a very long time. So for Japanese government, this might be a relief. And this is something that they can tell Okinawa people that we are doing something.
And they have seen some results,
yes.
Right? So kind of like the legacy of the Biden administration and also the internal pressure from Okinawa. Moving on, we understand that Trump will take office very soon in January. And as reported by Kyodo News, Trump is set to hold talks with Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba in mid-January. So do you think that after Trump takes office, will there be a major shift in terms of the military cooperation between the U.S. and Japan? Or do you think that he will continue on this path? Kai-jun?
Oh, that's a good question. As for the prospect of Trump-Ishiba relations, I think, personally, I think he can build on to the solid relationship that was formed between the two countries with former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe with Trump. And I think one of the clear evidence is that I think it's 1 week in a bit few days ago that the widow of Prime Minister Abe, Akie Abe, met with Trump. So I think that's one of the things that I think Ishiba can absolutely build upon in the future.
Professor?
Well, I think the meeting where we just mentioned has some meaning. So Aki didn't mention anything about meeting with Trump in the future between the Prime Minister of Prime Minister Ishiba, but there might be somebody who proposed to Trump, and Trump just answered that question. So in a press conference a few days later, we see that Trump seems to agree with a meeting before his inauguration. Which means that's pretty special.
Yes,
right?
that sounds like something very important.
Right, but I would say that Trump and Ishiba will talk about something more than security. They will talk about economy. They will talk about Japan's trade with the United States, and security is just one of the issues.
So according to Yazhou Zhoukan, the U.S. military's withdrawal from Okinawa is aimed at diversifying the risks. So talk about the importance of Okinawa in the first island chain, because in the event of a Chinese invasion of Taiwan, definitely for Taiwan, we will need to rely on the support from the United States, where a lot of American troops are based in Okinawa. That would make Okinawa an easy target to be attacked by China. Do you think that for Okinawa, what kind of assessment or what kind of actions do they have to take when it comes to the possible threat from China, especially when it comes to the long-range missile capabilities from China against Okinawa?
So in terms of Okinawa, actually you don't have to take long-term ballistic missiles. You actually just need short-range ballistic missiles. And China has at least 5 types of short-term ballistic missiles that can hit Okinawa. China has around 750 to 1,500 of them. So yes, Okinawa is under missile threat from China. However, we also have to understand that Japan has established a very solid missile defense system, which means even though Okinawa might be a target in case of a Taiwan contingency, which is pretty real, I would say, but Japan has prepared for that.
Right. So, Kai-jun, what's your take on this? Because we're both Taiwan and Okinawa. We're located in the first island chain. If something happens.
Absolutely. I mean, from the main island of Okinawa all the way to Taiwan, we're talking about approximately 630 kilometers. And for, the Japanese F-16s and the US F-16s, F-15s, and also the F-35, theoretically, they can, enter the theater of combat perhaps within 20 to 30 minutes. So Okinawa is absolutely important. And, I'm not going to be surprised, and I think a lot of people already knew this, is in various war games or tabletop simulations, there is, a lot of scenarios that were considered when it comes to Okinawa being preemptively striked by the PLA and these sort of stuff. So, Okinawa absolutely is a very crucial component when it comes to U.S. countermeasures towards any sort of warfare happening in Taiwan.
So we talk about the situation between, say, Okinawa and Taiwan. So now let's move further up. Let's talk about U.S. Japan and also U.S. Korea. So the adjustment of the relocation plan, definitely we're not only looking at a situation between U.S. and Japan, because we understand that prior to the U.S. presidential election, Donald Trump already threatened that not just Taiwan, but also other countries like South Korea. If you're looking forward to more U.S. military support, you have to pay, you have to contribute more. And definitely he also talked about the military forces stationed in Korea. And we understand that currently South Korea is facing some dramatic changes in the political regime, causing great instability. What will be the likelihood of American troops being relocated out of South Korea?
Okay, to my knowledge, during the presidential electoral campaign this year, Trump didn't mention about withdrawal from South Korea. So I don't think Trump has a plan to withdraw forces from South Korea. However, if we're talking about relocation, actually the U.S. has done similar things in South Korea years ago. So in 2018, the U.S. moved its South Korea command and the UN headquarters command to Camp Humphreys outside of Seoul. So it was originally in the Yongsan military base. So this has been there for a while, and the U.S. relocation of its forces basically is a response to the grievance of its allies, especially from the South Korean people. So I think it doesn't diminish the U.S. commitment to South Korea. It doesn't mean that South Korea will have to stand on its own. However, I would say that in the future, when Trump got into office, Trump will certainly try to ask South Korea to pay more in order to exchange for security.
Talking about political priorities, I'm just curious. For Taiwan, we're located in the Asia Pacific region. Definitely, this region is of paramount importance for us. But for the United States, it seems that they are very busy with wars raging in different parts of the world. For example, Ukraine, the war is still going on, and Israel, and now we have Syria. After President Trump takes office, how important will Asia Pacific be? Will it still be a priority, Professor?
Well, I would say he would think Asia Pacific as a priority because we are rich. Unfortunately, security issues has not been the highest priority in Trump's mind. Trump likes to talk about threats, but usually he talks about the economic threat that would impact ordinary American people. So we're not sure that Trump really cares about the security and well-being of the Asian Pacific countries. However, I do believe that some of his advisors and his administration will care about Taiwan's security, Japan's security, and South Korea's security, or the security and stability in South China Sea.
Because of economic concerns.
Well, that will be something that it will that these countries
you
can
won't say
bring.
It out loud, right?
But those countries can bring economic benefits while maintaining good relations with the U.S.
Kai-Jun, what's your take on this?
I mean, Taiwan has semiconductors, right? Is one of the crucial key resources for a lot of major countries to win the race towards, technological superiority and also military superiority. And I do have to echo with the professor and perhaps with other external speculations that Trump does bring certain economic elements into this, right? When he talks about Taiwan, he says, Taiwan stole the semiconductor jobs. And given that our surplus with the United States, trade surplus, is going to perhaps drifting towards or even exceeding $60 billion this year. So Trump is going to perhaps look at that number and then basically says, I want to balance the book. So one of the priorities, basically, how do you, satisfy the incoming administration on that regard?
Indeed. Recently, the U.S. Senate passed the National Defense Authorization Act, NDAA, for fiscal year 2025. The act includes a special fund of up to $300 million aimed at providing military resources to Taiwan, enhancing Taiwan's self-defense capabilities. So could you please explain the importance of this NDAA Act and also the fund coming from this act, Professor?
As far as I understand, well, this fund is something that the Pentagon can use and to buy military equipment or services, assistance to foreign countries. So normally it's foreign countries who buy service and equipment from the United States, right? But the Pentagon can buy these things for them. So this is the so-called Ukraine mode. The Pentagon and the Congress has been authorizing Pentagon to do this and assist Ukraine. So the meaning of this fund is that Taiwan is something like Ukraine, something like the Congress believes that the U.S. should help Taiwan in terms of getting some special fund, even though the fund itself is not pretty large considering we just bought like $2 billion on sales, right? But this is, we have to note that this is what Pentagon can use, not what we contribute to the U.S. So this bill has some political meaning. I also have to add that even though the Congress authorized this bill, NDAA, it would have to pass another appropriate bill to actually get funding into place. Yeah.
So, Kai-Jun, what do you think of the importance of this bill and how will this help Taiwan, given the fact that we have already purchased a lot of arms? Some of them are still being delayed, but what do you think of this NDAA fund?
I think number one, Congress has been increasingly creative when it comes to how do you accelerate is security supports to Taiwan, and also it has been groundbreaking for the past few years. We went from foreign military sales all the way to FMF, and you have PDA. Now you have LIS. It's basically a model after the Ukrainian security cooperation initiatives, essentially. So there are many exciting articles that are being proposed and also discussed. We're talking about anti-armor equipments, radar, drones, anti-ship missiles, integrated air and missile defense, and all these different things. And perhaps also most importantly, you have joint programs on military trauma and these kind of training initiatives. So I think is pretty substantial. I think the cooperation of two sides have long ago had already surpassed the simplistic so-called only supplying hardwares and everything. Now we're going into deeper details when it comes to how do you jointly do trainings, how do you jointly face various scenarios. But I do also have to say there's a lot of real challenges ahead of us. Number one is about our capability, the Taiwanese military's capabilities on absorbing the U.S. articles that are going to arrive in Taiwan, the production pace of U.S. firms, given, as the host previously mentioned, several crises around the world at this time, the available training stockpiles of the U.S. Military, and also the speed of which these things will get delivered to Taiwan.
Exactly. Yeah. Now we have the NDAA fund in place. We understand that that is going to be delivered in the future. And we know that this fund is used to counter the threat from China. But also, as mentioned by Trump, who is very confident about his personal relationship with world leaders. He confidently says that he called upon Chinese leader Xi Jinping. He believes that U.S. and China can together resolve almost all of the global issues. How do you think that this is possible? U.S. and China working together to address all of these important global issues? Or how do you see the future, say, U.S.-China relationship or even rivalry, Professor?
Okay, so we know that in a recent interview of Trump refused to endorse Taiwan's security, right? He even rejected twice. But he said that he will negotiate with China. He would like to, he sees himself as a negotiator who can give benefits to all of the parties, including Taiwan and China. So we still have to wait and see whether Xi Jinping accepted the invitation to go to the inauguration ceremony, right? But of course, we can imagine that dialogue between the leaders of the U.S. and China would be somewhat a good thing because they at least have to have a way to discuss their differences. Of course, Trump himself has a lot of grievances against China, including the U.S. trade imbalance, including the economic competition between China and the U.S., and also about China's aggressive move in different places in Asia Pacific. So there are a lot of things to discuss. Like I said before, I'm not sure that security will be the priority of Trump, but certainly I believe his administration will try to address this issue. So in terms of the future rivalry, I would say the competition will still continue. I don't think China will easily succumb to U.S. pressure in any area, including economic or military or territorial claim. So that brings us to a more uncertain world, to be honest. Even though we said we should wait and see, but even before the election, I'm more pessimistic about the stability of the world order in the future.
So, Professor Chen, you're more pessimistic. What about you, Kai-Jin? Are you more optimistic or pessimistic about the, say, U.S.-China relations in the future?
I think we're going to be a little bit cautious about what is going to come. I think one of the interesting side about the incoming U.S. president is that I think he demonstrates both his carrot and also his stick at the same time. On the one hand, on the carrot side, he broke tradition by inviting a foreign leader into the U.S. presidential inauguration ceremony. On the other hand, during his election campaigns, and he still talks about it, as a president-elect, is about correcting trade balance with China, potentially imposing tariffs on China. stopping Chinese economic espionage, restricting Chinese ownership of resources and infrastructures and all these things. I think Trump might define the future relationship as, if you satisfy me on one commitment, let's say, for example, China assisting the United States on stopping what the U.S. has been accusing of China in doing, for example, narcotics, for example, you have the border issues, right, that related to China. Maybe Trump will say, if you satisfy that commitment, I'll satisfy mine. If you fail on that commitment, I already show you what my stakes is going to be. So I think that's how he might proceed with this relationship in the future.
My quick final question, going back to you, Professor, you said that in an interview, Trump twice refused to endorse Taiwan's security. So how do you see the future in terms of the U.S.-Taiwan, in terms of the U.S. commitment to Taiwan's security?
So to be precise, Trump refused to say the U.S. will send forces to defend Taiwan's security. So I think it shows that Trump believes that whether its security endorsement to Taiwan can be bargained. It is something that he can negotiate with Xi Jinping. And it is something that he is unwilling to say clear and out loud, because I think Trump is very smart, because he understands that if he endorsed such thing, it would be interpreted by Zhong Nanhai as a bad signal. Beijing would believe that U.S. will defend Taiwan no matter what, and it will actually raise tensions. So Trump is trying to be very flexible about this, and trying to be very, I would not say ambiguous, but try to be difficult to predict in this sense. So it makes Xi Jinping very difficult to understand what Trump really wants and what Trump can give or can take.
I guess for us, what we can do is keep observing what's going to happen next.
We will.
Right? That's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for your insights. If you like our show, please search for us on YouTube, give us a thumbs up, and hit subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching our show today. Stay safe and see you next time.